Hello, everybody. This is Mark Kumar, your lifestyle entrepreneur and proud founder of Simple Podcast Cloud, a platform that allows podcasters to host your podcast on our platform. So that way you have a flexibility to move from one platform to another. And then where we are different is you have one account, you get everything unlimited shows, storage, podcast, bandwidth, you name it, everything else. So, in today's podcast, we have two amazing, awesome gentlemen from London who's going to be sharing their knowledge about podcasting. So, guys, without any further ado, please take your time to introduce yourself. So, whoever wants to go first,
All right, okay.
tell your name and a little bit about yourself, and then we can go to the next person.
Okay, cool. My name is Kersten, and I'm one half of the Camera Shake podcast.
My name's Nick, and I'm the other half of the Camera Shape podcast.
That makes a complete Camera Shape podcast. So, how did you guys meet?
How did we meet? Well, we originally we met in a different job originally, and we were both working for a music trust, teaching music essentially. But my job in the trust was also to create social media content and to create video. And so, since Nick is a videographer, by trade, that meant that we ended up working together. And since I'm a photographer, originally, that basically meant that we ended up working on a lot of projects together. And so, before you knew it, we were working on kind of external projects together, and that's basically what's led us here. So in real life, we're photographers and videographers, and that's kind of what we normally do when we're not podcasters.
So I'm so glad you said that you guys are a photographer, videographer, because once upon in my life, long time ago, I used to do the photography myself, the portrait, the wedding, the corporate events, the whole 9 yards. So we are gonna get along just fine. We'll talk about the photography business and all that stuff if you want to talk about that. So you could have had picked anything to talk about in your podcast or going to a different pod. Why photography? Is it because you guys know so much or you're passionate about it? What was the deal?
It's really we're so passionate about it, ultimately. And we've just found that, we just spend a lot of time. I mean, even in our like spare time, talking about photography and videography and cameras and gear and lenses and images.
Really geeky that way.
Well, there's sort of some nerdism to that, but we just have the same interests, and and for us, it was really. It was the idea of creating this podcast was born, long before we actually started doing it, and it took us probably, at least 6 months to get our shit together, essentially, and our first episode was aptly entitled "Done is Better Than Perfect," because that really kind of marked the starting point for us. We just had to literally, get our stuff together and actually just get started.
It was one of those situations where, because we've been talking about it for such a long time, it was them finding time, and you always have that excuse, right? Oh, when I've got time, I'll do that. When I've got time, I'll do this. You never get around to doing it. But it was one of the positives we needed to pull from the coronavirus outbreak. And, being in lockdown, being confined to your home, for the majority of the time, we thought, well, there's no better time than right now to start this and get us going. Yeah. And so that's what we did. We started over Zoom. We'd Zoom each other, but we'd film ourselves in our own place properly, and then we'd edit it together afterwards. And that's really how it all started, right?
Well, you could probably go as far as to say that had it not been for COVID and everything, maybe we wouldn't have started the podcast at all. It was literally like I remember like it was maybe 1 or 2 weeks into lockdown, and we've been sitting at home, in our respective homes, like basically doing not much more other than watching Netflix all day. Because from a business point of view, you can imagine, like, I had, as a photographer, I had projects lined up, and I had clients and shoots, arranged and everything went everything went. Everything went down to zero, like literally from one day to the next. And and you spend, you sit at home and you spend a lot of time with your kids and everything, and then at some point you kind of go, oh, I do something, and you know what I mean. And it just it was just at that point, where we were talking on the phone or on FaceTime or whatever, we were thinking like, we gotta do something, like, and then we thought like, that podcast idea that we were talking about.
Right.
Now might as well be the time. I mean, what else are we going to do? Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes people look at it like this pandemic thing is a negative thing, but on the flip side of it, it's the perfect opportunity to start not just only a new podcast or a podcast, but also start new businesses. I know a lot of people, because of this pandemic thing happen, their business just bloom like crazy bloom. So, which is a good thing. And then, on the flip side, there are other people who just don't want to accept the change. And change is good, I feel, because within the change, you find new opportunities. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Don't you wish you had bought shares in Zoom before the coronavirus outbreak, eh? Oh, man. That would be good.
But you're absolutely right, Mark. I mean, it is... in the face of something that is horrendous that's going on around us, and I was, like many people, we're all in that position where we've suddenly lost half of our income, and there's only so much you can do about that. Given the type of work that we're in, you can't really just claw that back straight away. So we thought, right, okay, well, let's look to the future at the very least, and go, okay, what can I do now? Now I've been gifted this time,
right,
to set ourselves up in a better position down the line. And while, obviously this podcast is the reason we do it, it's our passion, right? We love it. And that we wouldn't do it otherwise. We wouldn't spend all that time making it and editing it and releasing it and promoting it and so on and so on and so on. And coming on and speaking with you, Mark, you wouldn't spend all that time if you didn't love what you were doing. But, on the other side of that, what this will do for us is build trust with our potential clientele in the future, because we're clearly so passionate about it. We know what we're talking about, and hopefully that just go, oh, those guys have been doing that for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line. They must know what they're doing. They must, whether we do or not is kind of irrelevant. But
Eventually we will.
Yeah, it's going back to what you said. Done is better than perfect. So at least you got something out of it. And because if you got something out of it, a little bit of knowledge, whatever you feel like is perfect or not, somebody who doesn't know about it, to that particular person is like, yes, you guys are an expert. So, so expert photographer, obviously, and everything. So
and it works the other way around as well, because it's like, every week we're podcasting every week, and so we have to kind of keep ourselves updated. We have to read the photography news, and we have to trail the web to find out what's going on, and because we have to have something to talk about every week. It's sometimes it's easy to procrastinate, especially when after you spend like 3-4 months sitting at home, having watched The Umbrella Academy for the 5th time. Do you know what I mean? It's like things can very easily derail. And I think, certainly for me, and I know it's probably the same for Nick, really, is that, getting into podcasting in the first place in under these circumstances was it was definitely therapeutic, and so it became like a really important thing. We record every Monday and we release every Thursday. So that's kind of our turnaround work. And It's this therapeutic thing where, I know my week starts with that. And, and it sort of gives, especially, I mean, now things are very slowly getting back to, something that could be considered sort of
normal, the new normal, I guess.
Yeah. But so in the height of lockdown, literally, I mean, I'd forgotten what day it was.
Yeah.
It was just like, I had no idea. And we're like, Nick would ring me up and he'd be like, dude, are you ready to podcast in like 3 hours? I'm like, is it Monday? What the fuck is happening?
What do you mean? It's not Sunday today? What do you mean?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And so it kind of, really created a little bit of stability. So this, I think to us, yes, it's fun. Obviously, it's fun talking about photography and nerd out, for a couple of hours every week and stuff. But there's really more to it than just that. It's really kind of gotten us through a tough time, because when for any small business owner, when you're looking at all of your contracts disappearing overnight, and and you're thinking, whoa, okay, what's going on here? Like, I've got bills to pay and everything, I've got kids, and mouths to feed and all that, then then this is worrying, and that's apart from all the worry that you have anyway about health, about your health, about your kids' health, there's all of a sudden there's so much like negativity around immediately, and worry and all of that I think you just need an anchor, and that's really what I think, for me at least, that's what this podcast has done. It's just given me an anchor, just anchored me, and it got me from week to week. And we've just filmed episode 21, so it's been 21 weeks. It's and of course, in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. But for us, I mean, I remember, like, it wasn't too long ago. That was 21 weeks ago when we filmed episode 1, and it was like, woo, we're doing it.
Yeah. all nervous and
yeah,
trying to talk just directly to a camera, and Kirsten on the other end on Zoom, stuttering, and oh no, let's redo that. That sounds awful.
and it's still just as bad.
It's funny because you guys are obviously photographer and videographer and all that. So you used to getting behind the camera and recording other people. So walk me through the journey when you got in front of it, like when you recorded your very first episode. Walk me through the journey. I was like, how was that your experience? How much time did you spend preparing for it, and how much time did you spend recording it, and how many different takes did you take, and things of that nature?
We still haven't nailed the intro. Let's put it this way.
That's the royal we. Yeah.
I still haven't nailed the intro. That's 21 episodes in. Well, I think, when your podcast is about photography and about videography, and of course, because we always have we also have a background in music, so audio recording is the other thing of what we do. A podcast in its very nature is made up of these two things, audio and video to an extent. I mean, we obviously we release an audio version of the podcast, but we also have a video version of it on YouTube. So you can either listen to our silky smooth voices, or if that's not enough, you can get it going in full Technicolor over on YouTube if you're so inclined, that is. But that's a massive hurdle to overcome. It's a major obstacle. If we were like talking about nutrition or natural herbal remedies or whatever, right? Maybe we wouldn't have cared so much about the audio quality and the video quality and the resolution and the editing and the way the logo flies in and all that kind of all that kind of stuff. But if you're a photographer, if you're a videographer, if you're a visual person, then you worry about these things to the extent that it actually delays you getting started.
Yeah.
And I think we spend quite a lot of time in the beginning just worrying about these things.
That's a creative's curse, I think, and
it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Precisely. It's good until that point, and I know obviously. I'm sure we all work around and know lots of other creatives, and they're all almost identical. Every single one of them. Yeah. They won't release something until they believe it's 100% perfect. Yeah. And trouble is, 6 months down the line, they won't consider that perfect anymore anyway. No. So it's just get it out. It's 90% there. Well, is it? The 80-20 rule, isn't it? It's like, you get 80% of the way there with 20% of the I can't even remember what it is. You know what I mean? You can, within an hour, you can get 80% there. You can spend another 8 hours to get that final 20%, or you can just get it out and save yourself some time.
The great thing about the whole principle of podcasting, in a sense, is that you make a commitment to your audience. The tens of listeners that we have currently. You make a commitment that you release on a certain day because you create this expectation, and then you got to deliver. And this is the sort of commitment that we set ourselves from the beginning. Was that's what we were going to do, and we're going to do it come rain or shine. We were late once, I think. Was it maybe
It was
twice?
a day
Maybe.
late,
Maybe.
yeah.
We're right. Well, maybe once. But it's a so you can't be too precious, really. And if I think about the way we're recording now, the way that the podcast sounds now, if I compare that to the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 episodes, maybe there's
You
major.
talk me like what did you guys use for your first episode compared to what are you using now in terms of equipment wise?
I still use exactly the same.
Actually, the gear is identical. Yeah.
Really?
Well, I think we changed. I think we swapped out a couple of mics, potentially.
Okay, well, actually, I tell you what's different. So originally, when we were, in lockdown, I was recording myself in my place, obviously, and Nick was here in his place, and we were talking to each other over Zoom,
Okay.
and we had the cameras pointing at us. So what you see in the final video is actually, it looks like I'm talking to the camera, but I'm really talking to the screen. And I'm talking to Nick on the screen, and then we had the problem that there was some like audio spill, and which we had to then gate out and everything. And so the audio quality in the first few episodes, maybe up to
2 or 3.
Yeah,
2 or 3.
we really had to dial that in. I mean, that was that there's a lot from our perspective when we listen to it now. We find there's a lot wrong with it now compared to what we're doing now. And of course, now what we're doing is, now that we're in the same space, that we're allowed to be in the same space again, we're now filming. We have a principal, camera one, which films the both of us, and then we have 2 more cameras which film ourselves individually, and when it's cut together, it's basically a 3-camera setup essentially. So in terms of gear, I mean, what's changed is, well, the set has changed because we're in a different space,
right?
Same space. And at least, I mean, for my part, I was sort of experimenting over the first 4 episodes because I was trying to find the right space in my house. It's like, am I going to sit against this wall or against that wall? Yeah, or that corner over there.
Right.
So
what was your experience like?
It went from filming ourselves in our own home over Zoom with what we had, 1 camera each, to us being face to face with a new set and a 3-camera setup. Yeah. I guess the only other thing we've changed is lighting a little.
Yeah.
We use it doesn't really matter what we use, but it's an aperture light. But we were using a big, huge softbox for a while at an angle, but because it's so massive, we couldn't get it into the position we actually wanted it. So now we're using a beauty dish as well, with a couple of other kind of fill lights knocking about, which we don't have on at the moment.
Yeah. So we're kind of, managed to, of course, now we're managed to pool equipment, which makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've converted basically half of my living room to permanently be the set now. So I've had to rearrange myself here because I couldn't be bothered to keep setting it up. And
that's commitment. Sheer commitment.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm finding out because obviously you guys are a photographer. You have all this equipment with lighting and things of that nature. You can set all them up and get perfect light. But like you said, setting it up and then breaking it down is like, then you guys only releasing 1 episode a day? I mean, a week? And then the setup itself sometimes could take a while. How long was your setup when you were putting everything together for your video podcast or podcast in general?
At least an hour.
An hour?
Yeah, probably about half an hour, 45 minutes. Because I actually measured stuff out the first time I did it and made sure things went back to the same spot just to try and save a little bit of hassle. But now it's, we come in, because we've done it a few times, we know exactly where we want it to be. It's probably taken us, I probably spend about 10 minutes before you arrive getting some of the stuff ready, and then it's another 10 minutes and we're about there now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the setup, it's a lot easier. I mean, it's a lot easier when you're in the same, when you're in the same space in a way, and also because at least part of the set is permanently set up, so it's, it makes life a lot easier. Previously, when I was recording from my house, for example, it was, I literally had to set everything up. I had to convert with like an extension in the house, which is like our little dining area. I had to move the table and get the chairs out, and set up like sound blankets, and the kids couldn't come in, and all that kind of stuff. So everybody got banished. Yeah.
Just be quiet. Don't make a noise.
That's it. And so, it was, it did have a lot of, impact on, especially in my case, because I have kids and, and a dog and everything. See, dog reference, had to get every time. But so it did have an impact on everybody else around it. And having said that, my wife and my kids and everybody, they're really supportive of my need to nerd out. But it's gotten so much easier now that we can actually be in the same space. It's just made the process easier. For sure.
It definitely helps out if you're in the same place. And then obviously, I'm assuming your guys' format of the podcast is two of you guys talking about your favorite topic, which is photography. But did you or have you ever thought about having somebody else interview and going on that route or whatever? Or you guys just think that you guys are talking among yourself, talking about photography? That's the format you are going to keep moving forward, or you want to venture out to another format?
Well, we've got two formats at the moment, haven't we? We've got one where it is an episode may just be myself and Kersten talking about photography news or perhaps a specific topic around photography, whatever it might be. But we do have guests on as well, and we've had quite a few on over the last sort of 20 or 21 episodes. In fact, we just filmed one before we came on here with a photographer. And so that will primarily, we actually started those off still talking about our topics, then bringing the guest in and film them separately. But then we found that it's a bit much, it becomes a bit jumbled. So then we moved to when we have a guest on, it's only about that guest. And then we're interviewing that guest, talking about, their photography business, whether they're professional or a hobbyist even, how lockdown and coronavirus has affected their business, what they've done to kind of keep themselves going and so on. And so we have those episodes. We try to do them alternate weeks. It doesn't always work out that way depending on guest availability and so on. But we try and do it every other week or so.
Okay.
We very quickly realized, actually really from the beginning, that, we weren't the only creative people in this position, So, and just like it was, therapeutic, really for us to talk, to each other, we also thought that maybe it might be a good idea for other people to join the conversation, because surely they'd be going through the same, insecurities and everything else. And so it just became a thing really that we ended up talking to other photographers on the show. And, and it was really eye-opening, really, because you might go into a conversation and you start talking about, okay, how has COVID impacted your business, blah, blah, blah. And then, it turns out they've overcome cancer, or they started their business whilst they were homeless or something like that. And you're going to go, whoa, okay. Whole different thing.
It's a whole new perspective, definitely.
Absolutely. Really, and it's sort of, it just puts everything into perspective for you, where you kind of think, well, here I am, whining on about the fact that I can't go outside my door. And as somebody who's battled, for 4 years, through several bouts of chemotherapy to overcome cancer as a single mom with 2 little children, boo, I almost feel ashamed of myself, do you know what I mean? It's like when you realize that other people have, other people's problems are so much bigger than you own. And, so, and even for those guests to be able to first of all for them to talk to us about that is quite humbling, in a way. But I think it was also something that was that proved to be quite therapeutic for our guests, because it just gave them an opportunity to actually just let it out and just talk about it, in a sort of in a public forum, which effectively podcast is. So it's been an awesome experience, actually.
It really has.
So
yeah, totally. Because I interview a few of the people, and another one example, like it's a homeless person. I interviewed somebody who was a homeless person at one point in life as well, and then he got over it and he has multiple different businesses. And I'm like, oh my God, like the same reaction here, like, oh my God, I am making excuses like I don't have X, Y, and Z. And this person literally had all the things going against them. And if he can do it, I can definitely do it. And I should not make any excuses whatsoever. I found those to be very inspiring and motivating. I'm like, wow, I need to just buckle down, get myself together, and get to work. And that's literally what I did. It's like, okay, no more excuses. The only excuse I would have if I'm in the hospital, I can't do it. Otherwise, there's no excuses. I need to move forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, and again, it was just, because the situation was as it was, I found it, I felt it was almost like a little bit like rocket fuel, There's this point at the beginning where, when the lockdown first happened and everything, you sit around and you almost like semi-depressed because you think of all the things that you've lost, and you think about all the things that you can't do. And then some people carry on like that, some people carry on just kind of, feeling sad about the things that they can no longer do.
Right.
But it was just this moment where, it clicks and you kind of go, okay, so what can I do? And then your can't do attitude turns into a can do attitude. And that it makes life so much easier,
Definitely,
and forward. So
yeah, definitely. It's like, for me personally, I feel like because of this whole pandemic thing, I have learned so much in such a short period of time, because now I feel like even though I may not know some things, I can figure it out. As compared to before this whole podcasting game, I was making excuses just like everybody else. Hey, I don't have, because of, I don't have a mic, I can't start a podcast. I don't have this because I can't start a podcast. Now it's like, I don't have a time. I got nothing but time. I have mic and all those things. So I totally understand. So tell me, how do you guys go about creating content for your podcast? What is your strategy? What is your thing that you're like, okay, I'm gonna talk about X, Y, and Z? How you come up with those ideas?
It's a good question, really, isn't it? Yeah.
what content?
Yeah. I mean, Kirsten touched on it earlier. We do scour the internet for what's going on in the photography and videography world, and we'll individually pick out 2 or 3 topics that we have sparked our interest, and sometimes there aren't any, and you go, well, this will be a challenging week, but we try and find a couple of things and that we find interesting, and we think other people might find interesting. If you talk about something that you're not, even if it's photography or videography related, if you're not interested in that topic, your listeners are going to know that. And you're not going to talk about it in the same way. So it's got to spark your interest. Otherwise, there's almost no point in doing it, because it's just going to be boring for everybody. Okay. So we'll pick those topics, we'll go through those, and then we end up just basically bouncing off each other. A lot of off the cuff, what's been going on in our week with work, and what we've been doing to keep ourselves creative and engaged with, in a world where things aren't quite normal right now.
Right. I think there's 2 elements to it, really. I mean, one is we look at what goes on in the world of photography, and we find out what's been happening, and we talk about, like, I don't know, the latest Canon R5 misery or whatever, right? We'll talk about that, of course, because people might be interested in that, and as a gearhead, I'm interested in that too, but we might come across a really creative story where somebody's done something that's really so, outrageously awesome, that we just have to talk about it, Like, I remember there's a guy who broke hundreds of thousands of phones because he changed the color profile on some of his landscape images that he put online, and it went viral. And whenever anybody on an Android phone looked at the image, it would break their phone. What a story! Come on, it's amazing. Awesome. And
who oddly found us on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I mean, this has happened twice now in only 21 episodes where we talk about a story that we find really interesting, and then the person who the story is about gets in touch with us afterwards.
Hilarious.
Small world, huh?
I know. When I say 6 degrees of separation, we must at least have 6 listeners. So that's our figure. You know?
Hey man, the way I look at it is not the amount of people that listen to your show, it's what you do. Like for example, even if you have 6 listeners, you're changing those people's life.
Yeah.
It's the most rewarding most rewarding experience ever I come across. Like when I first started my own show, which was like for entrepreneurs online, and it was like maybe 2 people listening the very first 2 weeks. I'm like, I got an email for that one person. It's like, I really enjoy your show. It's really cool. I'm like, wow, actually you were listening to the show. I thought I was just wasting my time. So it's not like how many people are listening, but how many people are listening to your show. And then those people are the quality people that actually tune into you every single week that you put out. They're looking for it. And if I don't put out an episode nowadays, like, how come you're not put out an episode? I'm waiting for it. I'm sure, like with you probably get the same thing. So I'm just curious, when you talk about your podcast and the content you talk about it, and has there been an episode or a topic that you guys got really, really inspired, or more importantly, got motivated talking about it? Is there any topic that sticks out to your mind?
That's a difficult one.
I mean, there were lots of topics. In terms of like, do you mean like in terms of like being inspirational, for example?
Or like one topic that you guys like literally sticks out because you're like, that was a good episode. We got really good content out of it.
There were quite a few episodes.
There were some a lot like that.
So there was one episode. Well, there's actually 2 episodes. We've sort of we mentioned some of those guests before.
Yeah.
So we talked to a photographer called Debbie Ram, and she overcame cancer.
Okay.
When she was building it. Well, actually, just as her photography business was really taking off, and she was really, getting a really good reputation, and it really started to kick off. And she was a single mom with 2 kids. She was diagnosed with cancer, and and then she was telling her story, about how she overcame that amidst all the fear of not being able to work, having 2 young kids, and apart from the fact that she thought she could potentially die, it was also like, how do I look after my kids and all that kind of stuff. And she's a really, really gifted photographer. And like I came back from an episode thinking, wow, that's so powerful. There's so much inspirational content in that. And when people listen to that, it's a real kind of like, it's a message of strength. And like that really I came back from that feeling really moved. And funny enough, then she calls up and she goes like, oh, if you like this, you really have to talk to this guy. It's another guest that we had on the show called Abu Shah. And so his story was that he started his photography business whilst being homeless, and he is now turned into a really successful wedding photography business. And he's like, he's very successful, and he's making really good money, I guess. And you would never know that he really started against all odds, being homeless. And he was photographing celebrities on the red carpet in London whilst being homeless.
Amazing.
And it's just this. It's those kind of stories that, because they give you a chance to reflect on yourself. They are really, I find them really powerful.
They're 2 of the interviews that as Kirsten's touched on. It's at the start of all of this happening, you do reflect on yourself and you think, oh, this is just all nonsense, and
Right.
you start floundering. You don't really know what you're doing. But after speaking to her, because we spoke to them in quite quick succession as well, didn't we? It does open your eyes to think, well, this is nothing. I'm lucky enough to be comfortable, and I'm going to get through the situation fine.
Yeah.
Buck up your ideas, just get moving, do something. And actually, that's what made me really, really want to continue doing this podcast almost.
Yeah, for sure.
It gave me that final kick to go, what, this is so worth doing. If I'm going to continue and sit here mooching about being unhappy and not knowing what I'm doing, and those guys can do something like that, I'm embarrassed for myself. So that kept me going. And I figured, if we're going to keep talking to people like this, that's going to make me such a better person.
Yeah. The other thing that's done is it's sort of it's made us realize that we're really in a position to give something back, and it's not doing the podcast every week and talking about things, maybe introducing listeners to new ideas. There's a thing like during lockdown when we got a lot of messages from photographers, maybe hobbyists or amateur photographers or something. We're sitting at home and they're saying like, oh, I haven't picked up my camera in 4 months. Like, it hasn't come out of the bag, because the things that I normally shoot, I can't shoot. Like, I like shooting wildlife or whatever, and I can't go outside, so I can't do anything. And so we thought, well, actually, there are lots of things you can do. There's lots of creative ideas that you can have and creative projects that you can do at home. And so we decided, it was a good opportunity to actually give something back. And so we set up this what we call the photo video chat, which is essentially a Zoom chat every week, which is on top of the podcast, where people can just link in and join the conversation. We'll just talk about. Initially started out just talking about creative ideas. What sort of stuff can you do at home? Like, okay, so normally you shoot wildlife, but maybe you have a garden. Maybe that's stuff you can do there, or you just find pockets of light in your house and create some cool images, or maybe try a different type of photography or something like that. There's always, something new that you can learn. Maybe you can get more into editing in Photoshop or something like that. And so at the moment, what that's led us to is that we're still doing the photo video chat every week, but it's sort of at the moment turned into a bit of a Photoshop training thing where people can join in. We're really taking it back to like beginner level, and I'll just do a session on Photoshop. We'll also do some Premiere Pro, and we'll do some Final Cut and whatever. And it's just, if people want to join in and learn something, sure thing, because it's learning stuff on YouTube is great. In a situation like this, you can actually ask questions. You have a live teacher there. It's free. It's just, we're having a fun time. I always have a beer. It's all good. You know what I mean?
That always helps. Yes.
Yeah. So, so we can give something back. So if somebody's interested and they want to learn, then the more the merrier. It's great.
Do you know one of the really positive things I took from that to when we first started doing those? The photographer Debbie Ram, who we mentioned, joined 2 or 3 of those. Didn't you?
That's right.
And during those early sessions, we would often kind of get the ball rolling, get people talking by just mentioning a project that we've worked on, either individually or together in the past week or so, just so people had something to start talking about and get them kind of used to what's going on.
Right.
And as a direct result of us talking about those things, Debbie contacted us, didn't she, afterwards? And she said, "You know what? You've inspired. I haven't picked my camera up in 3 or 4 months." And she's a pro photographer, right? But she hasn't needed to. There's no work out there right now. Right. And you've inspired me to actually get my camera out and go and do a project in my house.
Holy cow.
That was a really cool moment for me personally. Yeah. That feels good. And if that's happening to other people on that call, and anyone who happens to be listening to our podcast, that job done as far as I'm concerned. That's got people being creative and doing something that they know they enjoy.
And I think that's also like with the view to moving forward, and moving out of the whole kind of lockdown thing and the whole coronavirus thing. So let's say once we're back to to the way that the world used to be, then this is still supposed to be the kind of podcast that where we talk about creative things and creative ideas and like new projects that we've been working on, and we talk to photographers, for instance, who use very particular techniques. Like we talked to somebody called Dave Cox the other day, who specializes in he's a CGI artist actually, but he specializes in light painting cars, which is a really cool technique. It's actually not that hard to do, and it allows you to create some really super awesome images of cars. And
it's something neither of us had ever done before.
No,
it's like, I'm so glad you said that, because like you may find it very interesting and easy to do, but if you didn't know that before, you're like, holy crap, how did he actually do that? So you get to learn that from your podcast.
Precisely.
Absolutely. And I mean, so for instance, last night we were out light painting a car, and obviously, in the next episode we will talking about our experience and how that went, and so people can follow along, and then through social media and whatever, people can get in touch, and or they can join the photo video chat when we talk about our experience with that. So it's really it's sort of it's an opportunity to learn new things, to get some new ideas, and just and sometimes just to say like, oh, screw it, I've got the same problem as everybody else. Like, because there are weeks, of course, where I come to the end of the week and I think like, shoot, I had no ideas this week. This week really sucked. And I have the same problem as everybody else sometimes, where I just can't think of anything cool to do. But so it's really kind of reflecting real life. I think that's ultimately what it is. And when you're as a creative, and I don't even necessarily think it's only photographers or videographers or something like that. You could be an actor, or you could be a sculptor or a painter or whatever. I think creative people sometimes just hit the wall, and that's just how living a creative life is. You can't always be super monster creative all of the time, 100%. That's just how it is. And so sometimes you just need somebody else to spark off an idea, and that's and that's all good. I think we both listen to other people's podcasts. We get ideas from other people's podcasts, and there, of course, we have favorite podcasts that we listen to, and we can think, oh, this is really cool, or that's really cool. And it's, I think, the sheer fact that we're for some reason find ourselves in the world of podcasting in the first place is because that whole format of podcasting has sort of creatively inspired us to actually.
Have you ever thought in a million years, if this particular pandemic hadn't happened, you guys would be podcasting at all?
Yeah,
absolutely.
You would be. Or meaning, if this pandemic hasn't happened, like let's say last September 2019, that you were going to create a podcast in 2020.
Well, I mean, I actually think we probably wouldn't have started in March or April, whenever we started 21 weeks ago.
Right.
Maybe we wouldn't have started then, but I think we would have started at some point. I think that's pretty certain. It's the whole pandemic thing and the impact that it's had on people has given us a lot of stuff to talk about. So it's in many ways, it's sort of in a weird way, it's made it easier, because you talk to fellow photographers who are in the same boat and they have the same problems. So it's easy to talk about it because I know what their problems are.
Right.
Or imagine, for the most part.
One thing I learned from this whole pandemic and talking about podcasters, and not just one industry, I interview like few different industry, from your Facebook marketing, from your sales, from your baking, from your fitness person, photographers, videographer, you name it, every single industry, they all have the same problem that one industry had. The only difference is how you go about it. Like, for example, in videography, you're talking about like, I don't have any creative ideas. And then you go into the Facebook marketing part. I don't have any creative ideas. How do I go create my Facebook ads? So the creativity part of it is across the board, no matter where you are. And all the, what I call is the imposter syndrome, or your I'm not good enough syndrome kind of thing, that goes across the board no matter where you are. Sure. It's kind of really cool to realize. And then when you talk to different people in different industries, like, I am normal, I am not person who is like, hey, I don't know anything, so therefore I am not like somebody perfect or whatever. That happens no matter where you are, whatever industry, everyone feels the same way. So knowing that particular fact, you like, okay, now I feel better that I don't know a lot of stuff that I feel like I should know, but other people from different industry, they don't know either. It's okay that I don't know. That's what I realized. Like, it's okay not to know, but it's not okay not to know, but not find out that you don't know thing.
Yeah.
Because some people like, it's okay for me not to know, and they don't do anything to know that what they don't know. So like it's always have the curiosity, like what I don't know, how I can find out. It's okay not to know, but how I can find out to not know, if that makes any sense, kind of.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's just, and again, this is one of the things that it's really kind of driving us forward, because we have to, like, there's certain stories that kind of are continuous, they continue from one week to the next, and so once you get involved in that story, you're going to have to kind of follow it up. Like the latest one, the Canon released this camera called the R5, and they've released it. There's a lot of controversy about it, blah 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 blah, and so it just carries on from one week to the next week. 1 week everybody goes, "Ooh, look at the R5." The next week it's like, "Oh, it's overheating." And then the week after that it's like, "No, it's not. We have a fix." Blah blah, and it's like episodic. It's like every week. It's like, any news about the R5? Well, you betcha. Yeah. So, what it means is like, you've got to kind of you got to keep in there, and you got to like follow that conversation through. Once you started it, and that's interesting because, because you're continuously keeping yourself updated, and of course you're continuously learning new things. Like there's certain technical. I mean, I'm not really the technical guy. Like Nick is much more into the technical details. I'm more like some guy flew a drone and took family portraits on the 15th floor of a skyrise building. Whoa, that's a cool idea, And Nick is more like, well, have you seen the ND filter? You know what I mean? It's like
let's bring it down to reality. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's like so. I think generally, that makes it interesting. For me anyway, because I always think like, okay, I wonder what story Nick's going to pick this week. And of course, I mean, sometimes you have weeks where there are new, like, a lot of like new releases of camera stuff or whatever, and then you have weeks where none of that happens and somebody says some crazy stuff, and you talk about that. So, but yeah, you're constantly learning new things.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do is like you constantly learning new things and new ideas that come across, and then things you probably wouldn't even thought about it. Like, so speaking of new idea, if somebody has a great, amazing idea about starting a podcast, what advice would you guys give that person? Let's say a person's name is John. He's 25 years old and he got this new podcasting bug. I want to create my own podcast. What advice would you guys give?
Pick a date and get started.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Just do it. Just start.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, literally, done is better than perfect is actually, it's probably the best title that we could have found for our first episode, because it literally, unless you commit, you can push this ahead of you, forever, for years, literally. It's like you just have to set a date. I mean, that was literally how it was for us. We were talking about it for like at least 6 months or something. And then when it came to it, it was probably, I don't know, we're talking about it like on a Friday or something. It's like, okay, we're going to do this thing. When are we going to start? Monday.
Yeah.
Monday.
That's exactly how it happened, wasn't it?
Yeah. 3 days from now, we're going to start. That's when we're going to record our first episode. Let's give ourselves a good old kick up the ass and let's keep going, and that's it. I mean, because otherwise you can go, yeah, but what about the microphone? I need to do this and I need to do that. And what about this? And we have to check out and we have to test this. And then maybe, all of that's nonsense. You just have to basically set a date and get out there. And then, once you've released the first episode, tell people what the deal is. Like, basically say, like in our case, you basically say, right, this is our first episode. We're going to release an episode every Thursday. Boom, you're committed.
Yeah,
that is it. You're committed. And really, it doesn't matter whether it's perfect or not. It doesn't even matter whether you know the format yet, whether you've really got that locked down or not. It really doesn't matter, because who cares if after the 5th episode you decide you're going to turn it from a 1 hour, like a 60-minute podcast, to a 35-minute podcast.
It's your podcast. You can literally go high and low if you want to. Like, if you start from 20, you can go to an hour. If you're an hour, you go back to 30 minutes. That's the flexibility part. Is awesome. Yeah.
And you find out as you go along. I mean, that's the
thing. You will continually change. The podcast on episode 1 to episode 50 is not going to be the same podcast. could be completely different, and that's okay. And so what I would say to that person is, seriously, if you were to go and film it tomorrow and release it the day after, whatever it might be, what is the worst that could happen? People don't listen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the worst that could happen, and that's no big deal. Then you've not lost anything, have you? You've just lost a bit of time, but at least you've started.
Well, see, and the whole thing about equipment, because this is one of the sort of stumbling blocks a lot of the times, like, oh, I don't have a good enough mic. I see this, with my daughter. Actually, my daughter is just my oldest daughter has just started. She picked photography as a subject at school. So her school started again in the UK over here.
Coincident.
And she's picked photography, and it's amazing. Like, she went away for the weekend the other day, and she forgot her camera. And she had to finish a project for a photography class. And she called me up in a panic. And she was like, oh, I can't do it. I forgot my camera. Oh, everything's a disaster. And I'm like, you got a phone? Yeah, I'm calling you on my phone. You got a camera. I mean, I was, oh, but I can't use this camera. Why not? Why not? I mean, you've got a camera there, who's going to, you're not going to get arrested for using your phone camera and some video. Yeah. No, that's all nonsense. I did... one of these sort of eye-opening moments was maybe a few months before lockdown, so probably like January maybe.
Okay.
I did a portrait shoot with this artist, and she was doing a podcast at the time. She said to me like, "Oh, do you mind if I interview you for my podcast?" And I'm like, whilst we're doing the shoot, and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, that's cool." And he said, like, we can talk about the shoot and the kind of image that we're creating and all that kind of stuff. It's like a promotional image. And literally, she just recorded on her phone. That was it. It was just literally on her iPhone. Put the iPhone in the middle, and we're just chatting and we're just talking. And when I listened back to it, it was great. It was an audio only podcast, but it was really interesting to listen to. Apart from the fact that initially I really didn't like the sound of my own voice, but 15 episodes in or something, you get used to that.
Yeah.
That was one of my biggest challenges too. Like, when I first started recording it, and like the first episode I listened to, I'm like, oh my God, I don't sound like that. I sound horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. No.
Especially if you like getting into the podcasting world, there's a power tip I can give you. You are not going to like the sound of your voice if the first time you heard it on your own, you're like, holy crap, I don't sound like that.
It's like, I'm like, man, is my accent really that bad?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But it really is this. There's really no there is no bar low enough to keep you from creating your first podcast. I think that's the way to think. And then because if you start like just with your phone or something, you start really low, then the only way is up.
Yep.
You can only get better from there, and that's cool, because ultimately it's about what you have to say. It's about engaging people and stuff like that. Is anybody gonna give a damn whether I'm recording this into a Rode NT1? Probably not, but it might be one person. There's always one person.
I'm so glad you said that, because like if you put it from another perspective, for example, if you take your car to get an oil change to a garage or somewhere, a shop, you don't care what the mechanic looks like. As long as he can fix, then do the oil change, that's all that matters.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, it's like it boils down to like content. If your content is good, the audio might be a little off here and there, but as long as the overall content, people can use it to better their life or the thing they're working on, in your case of photography, if they could learn a trick or two or secret to help them improve their photography, whether it be a gear or lighting or posing or whatever, that's all that matters. The audio part, if it's a little bit lower than your standard, people will be okay with it. For example, I'm sure everybody in the planet has watched a YouTube video where sometimes the video quality or the audio quality was not up to your standard, but you didn't give a damn, because as long as whatever the person was teaching you, you can learn it and use it. That's all that matters.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's a learning experience for for us too, obviously.
It is, and Do you know, I was thinking about this earlier. Do you know, once you're over that hurdle of those first few episodes, it starts to become a habit, right? And you look forward to doing it on a Monday. But another bit of advice I'd give someone is, if you have the option to do it with someone, a couple of things are going to happen, right? That person's going to push you to do it that week, and vice versa. It's a bit like going to the gym with someone else, right? You're going to push each other to go rather than going on your own. And it's the same with this. You're working with someone else. They're going to push you. You're going to push them. You're both going to want to do it then well together. And you've then got another mind to bounce ideas off, and and come up with new topics and new ideas. It's
Just like the SEALs, man. We're like the SEAL team.
yeah.
All right, cool, guys. Well, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, sharing your ideas, your secrets, your tips. I know people who are going to listen to it, they're going to absolutely be amazed with it. So, last thing I want to do is two things actually. The one thing would be like a question they want to ask both of you. Who wants to go first?
You go first.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah.
All right, so question for you. If a younger version of yourself, let's say you are whatever age group you are, a 19-year-old kid, a younger version of your 19-year-old, ask you wherever you are in your life right now, I want to get there faster. What advice would you give the younger version of yourself?
Oh, okay. Get there fast. Okay, right. So to help understand my answer to this, I spent the first kind of 15 years of my working life working for Amazon, right? So I was working in corporate, right? So that gave me a lot of certain skills and things that I wouldn't have learned anywhere else, right? And that's, I valued my entire time there. However, was I ever happy when I worked there? No, it wasn't what I wanted to actually do. So I eventually made that jump a few years ago to go, you know what, I need to do what I actually love and enjoy. I'm in a fortunate enough position to be able to kind of help myself through that, but I need to do that. And I've never been happier. Never, ever, ever been happier. So what I would say to that 19-year-old is, you need to make money. You need to be able to live. However, if you can, wherever possible, make sure you do that in something you're actually passionate about. In the long run, you're actually going to be a happier person. And eventually, over time, you're actually going to earn enough money to be able to live. Don't throw yourself in the deep end where you aren't earning money and you can't live. But if you've got the option to do something you're passionate about, absolutely do it. My biggest regret is not doing that when I was like 18, coming out of school.
Okay. Very good advice. Solid advice. How about you?
I would say, realize that opportunities don't come to you, but you create your own opportunities, and that's something I think. That's sort of something, when I first started out in music, that was my, that's I'm a musician. I'm a musician by trade, if you want, because I studied music and I worked in the music industry for a long time as a musician. And I think you spent, especially when younger, you spend a lot of time just waiting for opportunity to knock, but opportunity never knocks. It's you who's got to knock opportunity's door down. That's how that works. Not the other way around. If you're waiting for opportunity to knock on your door, you're going to be waiting for a hell of a long time. So it's create your own opportunities. Follow your own dreams, and make the things happen. Nobody's going to make them happen for you. If you're waiting for that, then you might as well go home. But it's important to take that proactive stance, and get used to rejection. I mean, it's as simple as that. Any creative will tell you that, for any job you ever gotten, you've been, turned down so many times. If you're an actor and you go to an audition, you're not going to get the first audition. I mean, yeah, there may be cases where somebody really famous went to the first audition and got the job and then became super famous and lived happily ever after. That may have happened once back in 1924, who knows? But, generally in real life, that really doesn't happen. People who are very successful have worked very, very hard. They've gone to hundreds, possibly thousands of auditions until, eventually they, drew the lucky straw. And it's no different in any other creative industry. You just have to, keep going and keep creating and keep making things or keep doing stuff. And, when it's your time, it's your time. But, nobody's ever going to knock on your door and say, hello, Mr. So-and-so, you're now going to be, really successful. That's not really how that works. There are a lot of good books out there, and it's kind of it's probably a sign of my age. I talk about books. Books? What's that? But there are a lot of really successful people who really lay bare their secrets to success, and it's usually hard work. It's really how that works. There's no way around that. So. I think the more commitment you show and the more opportunities you create, the more successful you can potentially be. And that's really the advice I would give to anybody. Don't expect opportunities when your door, but go and knock opportunities door down.
Absolutely, best advice from both of you guys, man. First of all, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate it. People who are listening to it, they're gonna appreciate it. So people who are listening to this particular episode, how can they get in touch with you if they want to get to know more about you?
Well, check us out. Obviously, we're called the Camera Shake Podcast. You can get in touch with us on Facebook. That thing that happened that was there before Instagram and TikTok. So you can find us on facebook.com/Camera Shake Podcast. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the well-known podcast platforms. And of course, you can hit us up on YouTube. Again, if you just search for Camera Shake Podcast, it will hopefully come up. You could be our 12th listener.
Cool.
Or you can use that thing called email, which some people still use. It's camerashakepodcast@gmail.com. You can just get in touch, hit us up, and talk to us in an intellectually challenging way.
Or not. Awesome.
Really, just get in touch.
I will definitely put all those links in the show notes for you guys to make it easy for you. Just click away and it will take you right there. And once again, man, I can't thank you enough for both of you for being here, sharing your knowledge and the valuable information that you shared. I know a lot of people are going to share. Appreciate it. And I wish you much success in your career, whether it will be photography today or something else that you do later on. And then nothing but best wishes for you guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.